All right, here I know I'm a little late to the party on this, but I just really wanted to talk about this book. I will say, first things first, I had some issues with Wind and Truth here, Brandon Sanderson's Wind and Truth. There are some narrative choices that I think could have been made to improve the book, and some that are just could be cut completely, to be honest. And in this video, I just wanted to talk about what I would change to make it to what I think would make it better. First things first, I said that again. I would have stuck to the same 5-part structure as opposed to the 10-day structure in this book. And I probably would have had Tara Van Gien. Oh, spoilers, by the way. In case you haven't read it, you can go read it, and then you can come back. I would have had Tara Van Gien kind of skirt around the contest instead of what actually happened, although I do like him taking up honor and becoming retribution and all that jazz. So in this video, though, I'll be sticking to the same 10-day structure. I'm not going to change the structure of the book, and mostly will be regarding the actual characters, like arcs in the book, and not really anything else. So yeah, I mean, it's just kind of weird. This is like the end of the first half of the Stormlight Archive, and all the other books had the same kind of structure, and then this one is just completely different, and it's weird. I also think it would have been better to have the editor that retired, I think, work on this final one instead of him retiring, and I think they had a new editor for Wind and Truth. So I think it would have been better if he stayed on for the final book, and it's in this first half of the Stormlight Archive, and then in like the next half there was a new editor, so then that way it will at least all feel the same. Like some qualms that I've seen on other videos is that the use of different language, like instead of courting, it's dating, and then the whole therapy thing, that Kaladin line, it's like, oh, I hated that line so much. It's just, I'm his therapist, yay. Good for you, I guess. There are things that I did like in this book, I will say. I liked that Kaladin became a herald. I liked the Tara Van Gien thing. I thought the contest was okay, although the Dalinars, we'll get into Dalinar later. I liked pretty much all of Yasna, where she kind of failed. I did like that because she needed to be humbled, because she's all cocky even though she's done like nothing. She was the first Radiant but didn't like find an order of Radiance. Everybody else had their own order, and she was just kind of the single Elst caller, so it's just wows. So yeah, for this video, I will be sticking to the structure, will not be changing, and the end will still be the contest. I will not change that. Before I move on to some of the first characters, I will mention I also did like the Unoathed, although I would have put that maybe in the next half of the Stormlight Archive in this instead, because I think with how it ended, Shallan's part ended, with her being stuck in the cognitive realm, I think it was, in Shadesmar, that a Dolan could really tap in more to his bond with Maya, and that would lead to the Unoaths in the future books. Because I think a Dolan would be how I plan it in the future is that a Dolan would be a much more prominent character. Basically, Wind and Truth is not a Zeth and Kaladin story. It is mainly focusing on Dolan and his rise into leadership is how I would have done it. So first, I think I want to talk about Navani. So for Navani, she was great in Rhythm of War. I liked her figuring out all the stuff with the Stormlight and Towerlight and the Anti-Light and all that. However, Brandon kind of backtracked and kind of just had her tag along with Dalinar for whatever reason. And you would think that they would see I understand that they're married, but you would think that they would see the wisdom in not sending both their bondsmiths to perhaps be trapped in the spiritual realm. Because that's not a good idea. And then so I think she should have stayed behind and probably worked on a way to neutralize the powers of the fused, like how they can do with those devices to the Knights of Radiant. They're able to kind of take away their powers. So I think she should have been focusing on that and finding weapons for that instance. Obviously, this would cut Lift out of having to pretend to be Navani, but she could still talk to the tower and find the room with the hidden room and all that stuff. So Lift could pretty much be the same. It's just her pretending to be Navani would be cut. And that's pretty much it. Which also, another thing I want to mention, this book it's the longest one in the series, and it felt that way for me. It felt incredibly long. It took me forever to finish. I'm naturally a slow reader, but I did not want to keep picking up this book. I did finish it. I honestly did not want to finish it because it was rough for me. But I think that's it for Navani. I would just have her basically more of her scholar stuff. Be more of a scholar instead of just tagging along with, Dalinar. Next, we can go ahead and talk about Shallan and Taravangian. So for Shallan, I felt that she did not, she learned about that she's basically the cause of all the desolations happening now, and from killing her mom, and she just kind of moves on instantly, which I felt was okay. I guess you can do that. Yeah, that's actually another problem I have with this book. Everybody is so knows what's going on in their own heads. Like they're basically all their own therapists and all are super aware of their what their emotional states, I don't know, like what is wrong with them emotionally, like that they shouldn't be feeling this way or whatever. And then I will say, I would have liked, I'll expound on this more. I'll expound on Shallan more whenever I talk about a Dolan, because I'll be talking about him in Dalinar. So, and then the Ghost Bloods are kind of okay. I liked it because, the Ghost Bloods kind of ends in that basically was kind of useless the entire time. But I think in the next 6 books, because she now has a connection to the leader of the Ghostblades, that could easily work in future books for Shallan's story. And then for Taravangian, I don't really have any qualms for him, except that he saved everybody in Kharbranth. He should have killed them all. That would have made him a much more convincing villain, because now he's not. He's a big old softy. We've already proven that Dalinar was basically right, so why is he even continuing? So that's pretty much all I got from there. And then I guess next we can talk about Kaladin and Szeth. Kaladin, it is so sad to see what happened to Kaladin in this book. Our amazing warrior turned therapist cannot. And then the nail fight, oh my gosh, freaking nail fight. There's definitely 100% a better way that could have been done. I think if instead of him fighting with the flute and beating Nail with a freaking song, it would have been much better if, I mean, no, it's just ridiculous. It would have been so much better if Kaladin actually did clash with, Silhouette as a shard spear, and but as they were doing that, the wind kept whispering to Kaladin names of people Nail saved, and so Kaladin kept repeating these names of people that he's never met, but Nail knows who they are, and that's how eventually Nail breaks down. Instead of the song, it's the people he actually saved. I think that could have been much better. And then there's the whole I'm his therapist line, which I think it should have been more of like a bellow of him coming to be like who he is and saying, I am Kaladin Stormblessed, son of wind and honor, would have been so much cooler than I'm his therapist. It's just, I'm his therapist. It's so lame. It's so lame. And it saddens me that that's a Kaladin line. I think that's it for Kaladin. For Szeth, I felt it was weird that he just immediately broke his bond. And I also felt that it was weird that he opened up so quickly to Kaladin. I thought that was really strange. And then that's probably the only things I've fixed for Szeth. I think for the rest of the book, he's kind of all right. But I mean, in 10 days, Szeth just spills his entire life story to Kaladin for no reason. And then his breaking of the bond felt weird to me. Also, going back to characters being aware of their mental states extremely well. Even Szeth was like that, which is really weird to me because Szeth does not strike me as the type of character who would kind of understand his emotions very well, or he would keep those internally and not express them pretty much. And then there's Kaladin becoming Herald. That was good. Szeth breaking his bond, not good. It was weird. I understand why, because then that Spren goes on to help with Sigzil, which I think Sigzil is fine in this book, because we basically see how Sigzil became the Sunlit Man, basically, which is okay. but it did feel weird that he just immediately broke the bond. But who knows? Maybe he'll get an honor sprint this time around, or in the next six books, and we'll see him grow. So next, let's talk about Verlaine and Renarin. I think their relationship is so forced in this book. It is so weird to me that they became a couple, because people do not see them like that. For the longest time, the listeners were slaves, and they're also basically the enemy, in quotation marks, is what everybody would see that as. So for Renarin to be attracted to Verlaine is kind of weird, but also it's also really weird is because I don't think they would have the same attraction as people. I think like people like girls usually like taller guys with muscles, right? And then guys like slender girls, you know what I'm talking about. But for listeners, I feel like the attraction might be more of like the skin pattern or the carapace, the giant colors and stuff like that. I think that would make more sense for them to be attracted to those things, like physically anyways. So it's just weird that Verlaine would be attracted to Renarin. Because I mean, Verlaine's a big dude, so he's got the bulging muscles. So there you go, Renarin. But I think it also would have been a much better relationship if they were just friends. I think because they're both kind of outsiders in a sense. So, because like Verlaine's like the only listener there, and then Renarin is also like he's outcasted because I mean he's like a high prince or whatever, but like he's not a warrior, which is what like the Alethi kind of were all about. So I think them becoming like good friends and being outcasts is good, but having them being in like a relationship is kind of weird to me. I didn't like it at all. I think it was super weird. It should not have been in this book. It could have maybe been like they should have been more scenes of it. Well, first of all, I wouldn't have had Verlaine and Renarin really interact at all in this book. But I also think that they should just be friends. And then maybe in the later books, if you really wanted to forge a relationship, you can give more of that character building where they will be more prominent characters in the next like 5 books that he's going to write of the Stormlight Archive. Then maybe you can give them a relationship. But in this book, it just felt kind of rushed and did not meld well with the story, I don't think. So yeah, I wouldn't have had that like at all. I would have saved that for the next 5 books down the line. I mean, I personally don't see them being together, period. I see them being friends, but if he wanted them to have a relationship, then those are for the down the line books, not for book 5 of the final act of the first half of the series. So for Renarin basically would have been the exact same. Like he would have also gone into the spiritual realm with Shallan, and they would have done that. But I'm going to mention this now because they're going to be the next people we talk about. I would have had a Dolan like, he could still agree to be, like, the guy that's going to be sent to Azimir, but I would have had him, like, kind of try to go and apologize to his, like, work things out with his dad, with Dalinar, and then, but that's, like, and then he finds them in the spiritual realm with, and then he sees, what's the kid's name? Gavinor, I think. Like, he sees Gavinor, saves Gavinor from being sucked into the spiritual realm, but then he is sucked into the spiritual realm. Jesus. And so it's Dalinar and Dolan that are in the spiritual realm, as opposed to Dalinar and Navani. And then Shallan and Renarin go in after them. And then that it's only those 4 characters that are in the spiritual realm. Well, obviously, and there's the Ghostbloods characters as well. So I think that would have been better. So because they would have seen Adolan get sucked into the spiritual realm, and then before they go in, they'd be like, oh, well, shit, now we need somebody else to go to Azimir, and then R'lain will be like, okay, I'll do it. I'm probably the best option. I can see into the future pretty much. I will go and do this. And it will also be better for human, like, listener relationship, because they'll be seeing R'lain there acting as, like, a commanding officer and basically being kind of showing that humans and listeners can work together and they can coexist. And then I would also have liked to see him use his abilities to then also, what did you say? To predict the attacks that are coming and actually be able to use his powers to be a good leader. And also, it would have been really cool to see R'lain be able to, like, convert some of the more, like, common soldiers over to his side. Would have been awesome to see that as well. So that's why I think that could work, because then you also have, he basically has an advantage because he can see into the future and knows what's coming, as well as being a listener can maybe convince others to kind of join up with them and abandon Odium. So, and then you wouldn't have had to have all the unoathed and stuff like that, because they would have just, I'm in my opinion, they would have just kind of won outright in that area in Azimir. So they would have stayed pretty much in the dome the entire time, but you know, that didn't happen, so whatever. And then finally we have Dalinar and Adolan. As I mentioned earlier, Adolan would get sucked into the spiritual realm. And instead of Adolan is going to be Odium's champion. And I know y'all are probably like, it's like, what? How is he going to be Odium's champion? It's because he is going to be butting heads with Dalinar the entire freaking time over the death of his mother. Because he's still pissed about that. Even though he knows that Dalinar is different, he's still pissed. And I think the visions and stuff will probably all be the same. And then Odium will basically hold on to Adolan while he's in that vision of Dalinar, as the Blackthorn just, like, burning the room that has his mom in it, whereas Dalinar will be pulled away with the Stormfather and learn about Tanavast and all that stuff. Meanwhile, Odium will be basically showing, because, like, these are visions, and Odium is a god. He can literally just show Adolan whatever visions he wants. So over and over and over again, I'm imagining Odium will show Adolan, like, scenes of Dalinar brutally murdering his mom, like with like a wicked smile or something on his face, and then and then until Dolan's hatred for Dalinar reaches a level to where he actually wants to kill his father because Dalinar killed his wife and all that jazz. And then he becomes Odium's champion. And then that would make it so much more impactful, because then, at least for the contest anyways, because you just have Gavinor. It's like, okay, this is a little boy that we've known for about, like, since, like, Oathbringer, right? Is whenever we actually got to see him, because he got rescued. And even then, that was, like, more towards the end of the series of that book. So we've only really known him. He's only really been here for 2 books. And he hasn't been doing much besides, being the traumatized kid. But with it being Dolan, a character that we've been with pretty much the entire series so far, and has had moments to shine in his own way, this would have been much better, because we would have cared a lot more. Because, like, I'm pretty sure none of us would have cared if Gavinor died. Whereas if it's Dalinar versus Dolan, we're like, shit. We like both these characters. I don't want either of them to die. So would have been more impactful that way. And then I would have, Odium wouldn't stop Adolan from getting his revenge. So Adolan would actually kill Dalinar, but just before Dalinar dies, he will take up honor and then break that bond, so retribution will still form. But then Dalinar, pretty much the same thing is all going to happen, and then immediately Adolan's going to feel guilty because it's his dad that died, and I do want Dalinar's last words probably to be him apologizing to not to Adolan for killing Evie, I think is how you say her name. I don't know, but to apologize directly to his wife that he killed would be good. Like seeing past Adolan in that moment and apologizing to his first wife. And then, once he's dead, he will say a death rattle about the rise of the Blackthorn. Would have been much, much cooler. Would have been much more impactful, because we would see Adolan's reaction to his father's death, and then maybe him actually swearing in an oath of some sort. Not necessarily an oath, but a promise, which are basically the same freaking thing. And being like, okay, I'm actually going to now have to take up leadership because my father is dead, and I will take up the mantle and fight against Taravangian, which would have been cooler. And I think that's about it. One more thing about Kaladin is that I think it would have been nice to also see examples, because we have the warrior thoughts, but it would have also been nice to kind of see him kind of dissecting Zeth's feelings more like a surgeon would instead. In addition to his outlook on it as a soldier. But yeah, I think that's about it for all we got for this one. I will say, Brandon Sanderson let me down with this one. I'll probably give him one more try in his next book. I haven't read the Mistborn series. I probably should, but I don't know. This book is kind of just taking me out of the Cosmere right now. I might try one more of his newer books to see if almost all of his books will kind of be how When Truth was, and if it's not, then maybe I'll keep reading. But right now, I'm not really looking forward to the future of the Cosmere. So, or the Stormlight Archive. I will probably not be reading any more of the Stormlight Archive. Because the books are super long, and they are, When in Truth was not good enough for it to be as long as it was, in my humble opinion. Now, I won't throw any shade on Brandon Sanderson. He's obviously a great author. I'm not. So this is just what I think as a reader would have been more impactful and probably more better for the story. Because you could have saved some of the stuff that happens in this book, which would have trimmed it down probably, but also allowed for expansion in the future. Like on the unoathed idea, like that could have been completely cut out and moved to whenever Dolan is a more prominent character. Because I mean, he's still a prominent character, but like I'm assuming in the next 5 books, the next half, this will be like Dolan will actually be one of like the main 3 perspectives, like how we have in like the first book we have Kaladin, Shallan, and Dalinar are our main perspectives. So I think that is what Dolan will probably be. So yeah. So he could definitely save some stuff for future books. So yeah, that's it for this video. If y'all have ideas of what y'all would have wanted to change with When in Truth, or like, feel free to leave those down in the comments, or make your own videos about what you would change. Alright, that's all. See ya.